Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. Morning coffee is here. I hope you have your cup. Let's get to the headlines right away. Alex should be joining us shortly. I don't anticipate too long of an episode today. We did a lot of talking about the World Cup last night on the podcast as well as with like Mateusz. So a lot of preview has been done. It's almost like when you get used to so many freaking games constantly, it's like a little slight withdrawal happens when suddenly like a couple of days with no games involved and stuff like that. So it's good to have that back in action. 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern, Argentina, Croatia today, and then I believe the same time tomorrow, Morocco and France. So we'll talk a lot about those. A couple of news I want to get to, a couple of headlines that we did not get to yesterday as well, like some of the stuff that has been happening over the weekend and actually like late last week. One of them is Grand Wall, who passed away. A lot of like conspiracy theories and stories behind it, especially coming from his family, mainly his brother, I would say. And I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like hard to tell. Anything can happen, sadly, because we've seen weird things like that happen. I just see it as a conspiracy theory right now because as we hear more and more and more, we find out about like he had like respiratory problems earlier, but such a young age at like 49, kind of like scares the hell out of me. That's for sure, being 48, almost 49 here. So, um, and a great dude overall. I really enjoyed his coverage. Great person to cover the sport overall. So it is a big loss. It's definitely a sad story. A guy who just over there covering it at that age, nobody would expect something like that to happen. Is there any foul play and stuff like that? I don't know. It just seems very far fetched and unnecessary for them to pick Grant Wall as a target. Personally, I mean, I don't know. Like I say, is there more to the story that I know about? Uh, I've read a lot about it over the last 2 3 days from like different sources and stuff like that, and it keeps circling around the same stuff, like the same people making the same conspiracy theories about it, but it doesn't like I say, to me it just seems far-fetched, but shit, we've seen like weirder stuff, so I guess it is possible, but it's a sad story regardless. A guy at this age passing away, and like I say, like a good coverage of the sports, and one of the few guys with a good head on the shoulder when they cover it and actually gave the news more than try to make it about them or sensationalize it and stuff like that. So Alan is with us this morning. Good morning, Alan. So yeah, that happened over I think it was like late last week, I want to say, but there has been a lot of news coming out. And obviously, I mean, sadly, I've been there, done that. My dad passed away. We were actually in London at the time. So it does take a while to move the body. There's so much paperwork involved, so many complications involved to transport, like, for like the funeral and stuff like that. I remember like, doing it in Turkey, and thank God my brother was more in charge of that crap at the time. But yeah, it's kind of like a huge ordeal. So I'm not shocked that it took this long. And now, like they're kind of like on Monday, um, it happened. So it's a sad story overall, but like I say, I just don't see the conspiracy theories, but it will make a good Netflix documentary one day with a lot of questions raised. And yeah, I mean, would I be shocked? No, at the same time, these are people that, when they think they're right, they think they're right, and they'll chainsaw you apart if need be. So would they lose something? I just don't know why they would pick Grant Wall as a legitimate targets in the scenario. But Reina news right next to it is that headline there. This is a big mess, and I know a lot of like our contributors who follow the national team closely are not big on Greg with several G's. So this story almost like fuels that fire. Oh, that's kind of good and bad, I guess. I know, I believe it was the father-in-law for Alan, but he's watching from the Memorial Hermann at Houston ICU. I hope everything is going well, Alan. I know he was there for a relative, and I hope everything is getting better on that end. So, um, send our get well wishes from American Scouser, the morning coffee over here. Hope you're not causing trouble over there at the ICU, though. Um, so going back to the Reina story, I don't know. It's kind of like a weird one. And almost like, did Greg say something too much without meaning to? Like he was trying to make like a coaching comment and said, like, for example, we had this guy, and then kind of like spilled the beans a bit too much. Or was it really a calculated comment that he made? I'm not sure. I don't know if he's that smart to throw that comment. So it's it's odd that, like, that story would come out, and obviously there was so much pressure on, why, and it almost feels like Greg was getting all this criticism in terms of not playing certain players, Reina being one of them, and he has turned to him when shit has hit the fan, but not as regularly as most believe he should. And is this more like him covering himself and saying, hey, this is why I didn't do it? He was being a pain in practice. First of all, I don't know why you would pull us. The story is obviously like he pulls the player aside before they go and says, hey, you're going to have a very limited role. Like, why would you even do that? Especially to a young kid. Maybe he wasn't even expecting a huge role in the first place, but why would you shoot that down before you even head over there and say, hey, by the way, you're not going to play a lot? I mean, some of the players that go there, I don't know, let's throw Fabinho out there, for example. Fabinho is going there. I mean, first of all, going to the World Cup by itself and representing your country is like a huge deal to these guys. So he already has that high. Why would you destroy that and be like, by the way, you're not going to play a lot? I mean, I highly doubt they told Fabinho, hey, you're not going to play a lot, by the way. I think some of the stuff goes without saying. And based on what has happened in qualifying and stuff, or these, like friendly games as they were getting ready for the World Cup, you kind of have a feel in terms of like who's going to be on the pitch. And why he would say that and throw it out there is beyond me. I'm not following that at all. So, and obviously, with all that build up, Reina has to come out and say it. I mean, should he have? I'm assuming he kind of like sulked and stuff afterwards, which is it right? No, he's a professional player, but still he's a kid and he's human from what I know. So it's kind of natural, I guess, in some ways to have some kind of an emotional drop off when somebody says, hey, by the way, you're just going to be carrying the water bottles around. So I think that's semi natural, but he had to come out and respond, which obviously makes it even worse and more of a drama, and kind of brings out all the stuff we were talking about prior. Like, I think it was like last week when the news came out that, like the way the team is selected, it's almost like the all-star game in baseball where they have to take a couple of guys from each team from like Major League Soccer, and they're like, you guys are involved too, and like bring those guys over and stuff. But in terms of like who gets to play and why they played over Reina, I don't know. It's almost like Greg just try to almost like cover up and like bring the story together and just like freaking blew up instead. In some ways, for those people who want Greg out, this is probably a good development, really, because it kind of like really clouds everything. And, if this story doesn't come out, I still think it looks like, hey, he took the team further than anybody thought. And, let's face it, that's probably true. Most people had Wales going out of this group, but then again, most people didn't have freaking Morocco in the semifinals either. So take that with a grain of salt. But so most people would have said, hey, like he did more than probably what most thought would happen. So we'll keep going with him. Next World Cup is here. These are young kids. He's developing them, blah, blah, blah. And then he would stay there. Well, something like this comes out. And I think that kind of says, does he have the team under control? I mean, these are young players that we're talking about developing and playing better 3.5 years from now, not even 4. Or does that make it look like, hey, he doesn't have control of these guys? So is this going to get only worse in 4 years? Like, is Reina going to be like, I'm done with the national team and stuff? How is Reina, after all this, going to work? I know they'll put their arms around each other and be like, oh, it's all good for the national team, blah, blah, blah. But, this kind of stuff does not go away or comes right back out at the first sign of him being subbed out or not starting and stuff like that. So it's unnecessary drama around the team. So in some ways, for people who are not big on Greg and probably want him gone, and I know a lot of fans do, I just don't know if it's the majority. I think the majority still feels like, oh, he's done well with this team. But I think that's because they've set the bar too low for this team, and there's a lot of good players that they're not getting the full potential out of. And it could be because, who's selected, who gets to play, and obviously Greg's tactics over here. And I keep hearing like Greg and Southgate. Southgate maybe a bit more has a chance of going to a different club, or heck, going to a different even national team. Somebody could say, man, if you could just play defense and then, like use these guys we have up top for counters or something like that. But I mean, who's hiring Greg? I really don't know who's hiring Greg. And I know there were like rumors that a couple of championship teams like were looking at him. Who and why? I mean, like, I know they're like American owners, but even an American owner, like, how are they going to bring this guy? Are they going to sell him as this is the guy that took US to further than everybody else thought? Is that going to really excite a city? Is that going to really, get that team going again? They're like, Greg is here. Not really. I just don't see that him having that kind of a deal. Whereas Southgate, and then especially when this comes out, it's not even like he works great with his players or something that you kind of get with Southgate, right? Like you get that impression that, but the players love him kind of deal. You don't get as much drama coming out of it. You didn't until now with Greg, and suddenly this comes out. So I think that kind of affects that too. So this whole talk about, I'm not sure about my international future, maybe I'll go somewhere else, is kind of, come on now. I mean, obviously, you want to say stuff like that, making it sound like you have other options. But a couple of other news, and we'll come to the World Cup. That will bring us to the World Cup. So obviously, a lot of talk about how Argentina ended up that last game against Netherlands. Here we go. Let's put that up on the screen, and then we can kind of like, this is kind of how they finished it up over here. And then, Argentina coach Scaloni says, what are you guys talking about on sporting behavior? None of that. Let's not talk about that and stuff. I think you just like kind of like deflecting it, because I'm sure he knows. And I don't know, even if this is, so we're looking at this from outside, right? So let's put ourselves into the situation. So if you're American, make it the US national team. If you're Turkish like me, put the Turkish national team. When it happens, you probably laugh, right? But that's partially because you're freaking relieved as hell that you just wanted penalty kicks and you're advancing, especially after you had the two goal lead, looked like you were cruising, and suddenly you got, your shit scared that you had to come back and win. So you're probably relieved, but at the same time, are you really proud of that? And I know, hey, been there, done that, right? Like, there are some games where it gets a lot more chippy, and when it's over, if you win, there's a little bit of in your face, like up yours kind of an attitude the moment the final whistle blows. Kind of like been there, done that. So you do that initially, right? Like you're like, ugh, like gotcha. But then that's it. Normally then you kind of like go back to your, even if it is fake, you kind of like go do the handshaking and stuff like that. Cause, and you might pick one guy that you're like, no, you're a jerk, I'm not shaking your hand. But the rest of the, the players and stuff, you just shake your hand. And in these cases, usually what we see is, some players kind of like consoling, some of these guys are their freaking teammates. So they have been their teammates and stuff. So you see them like consoling others and stuff like that, as opposed to just like, mocking them in their face and like then just like laughing and like running off like you're like five. So it is immature and it is unsporting. During the game, you can have a lot of unsporting things, and I think I have a lot easier time living with that because there's a lot of adrenaline going on. There's a lot of stuff going on that the camera does not even catch, stuff that happens off the ball. I mean, anybody who has played the game knows there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of drama, talking shits, pushing and shoving, late kicks and stuff like that the camera does not catch. And, those things kind of build up throughout the game. And you start, that's when games start getting chippy and stuff like that. And then, sometimes you see players interact and it's mainly because of all the shit that happened off camera. You're like, how did this escalate so fast? Well, it's been brewing all along. And sometimes like you get a glimpse of it here and there, but it's been brewing all along. So that's like the biggest thing to it. And so I can understand the in-game stuff, a late kick, blah, blah, blah. There's stuff going on. You're mad. I've done some shit. Anybody who's played done some shit, don't act like you have not. A late kick, a push, whatever it is, you've done it. And But when the game is over, like I say, it is on sporting behavior. I think, he probably knows that anybody I know who is maybe remotely related to the sports, and I mean that literally, like, they're not like huge fan, but they're kind of like following it. Everybody kind of gets into a World Cup. It's kind of like the Olympics, right? We watch it because there's so much like emotion involved. We end up watching sports that maybe we normally don't watch. If nothing else, with the World Cup, you're like, what is this big deal about this? And then they turn it on, which is good. It's good for the sport. But anybody who is casually watching it like that has kind of said, yeah, that didn't look right. It just does not look right, because in a professional level, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shit talking. We see it in American sports as well, but it's during the game and after the game. You rarely, very rarely, have something happening where that trash talking goes on after the final whistle. So it was disappointing. And honestly, and I talked about this before, I didn't put the freaking clicker in the ticker in there, but what the hell, let's do it. Thanks to Argentina, I am number one in the World Cup pool. Otherwise, was losing to the wifey over here because she had like uh Netherlands. But towards the end, I was rooting for Netherlands, just because Argentina got dirtier and dirtier and dirtier as the game went on. And not saying that, like, Netherlands didn't do anything, a lot of late fouls and stuff like that, but made me root for Netherlands more and more and more. And that's why today I will be rooting for Croatia. And I think they do have a good shot at it. And let's bring our Mr. Prediction over here from his car, as always. Of course, I'm saying Mr. Prediction, Alex, but the ticker says it all, baby. So what do you expect from the game today? First of all, good morning. You're in the car as always. But what do you expect out of the game today?
Sorry, I've been kind of all over the place this morning. What's the first game? It's say France.
Oh, Argentina, Croatia. What are you expecting to see from the first semifinal later on today?
I think it's going to be more of the same with Croatia, and they're going to try to nick a goal where they can try to get one, and Argentina will maybe struggle to break them down. I mean, they struggled. They struggle a lot breaking teams down. So, we'll see how that goes. But I think if Argentina can score a goal early, it's gonna be hard. You know what, I was gonna say it's gonna be hard for them to come back, but Croatia always has a chance of coming back. So, I think I want to say Croatia will pull it out today.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I'm, like I say, my heart is pulling for them. I think one thing that they have, and I think that's why, like, Messi was whining about it after the game, about, once Netherlands put Weghorst in there, and once they had some big bodies in the box where they could kind of like lob it onto, you could see Argentina was having a lot more trouble with it. And I think Croatia has those players that they can do that with, like with Petkovic and stuff. So they have like a big center forward they can throw out there who can hold the ball and who can bring the ball down, and then, like, have one of the wingers like run through. So I can see them causing problems. And when you have a guy like Modric kind of like pulling the strings, anything is possible. You had I forgot like your predictions. How far did you have Argentina going initially?
I think I had them losing in a semifinal. I don't know. I had to ask. I had that weird thing with my bracket where it didn't let me pick the knockout round, so I had to give my picks to Gally. But I think I had I know I had France. I know I had France and somebody else in the final. I had France winning it all because I just have a feeling it's going to be France winning it all. I think I had Argentina going pretty far. I want to say they were in. I want to say they were in the last four.
I mean, most brackets I think had that side going Argentina, Brazil, probably, especially once it was established. Like if you did your side picks, because I know where the groups did not pan out as planned, obviously people shifted side of the bracket and everything. But I think once it was established, I think most brackets had kind of like Argentina and Brazil playing this round, and that's I know what everybody was looking forward to in some ways. I mean, I wasn't personally, but I'm just saying, in terms of like a matchup, it would be a fun matchup to watch. I'll admit that, just because those guys go at it, and usually those games get pretty chippy. They have like quite a history from Copa America and stuff like that. But yeah, with Croatia's surprise, obviously Croatia shows up there. It's going to be a good game. I feel like this is the better, maybe a bit more cagey compared to the France game, because I get the feeling that France will get an early goal that will open up that game a little bit. There will be an earlier goal in that game, but I feel like this one is going to be cagey almost throughout, because Croatia is not the kind of team that concedes a goal and says, oh, okay, now we got to attack. They kind of keep the same game plan. But you mentioned France going all the way, so I assume tomorrow's game you're expecting a France victory as well.
Yeah, I mean, like my heart wants it to be Morocco versus Croatia, which would be amazing, but I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be France versus Croatia again. That would be an amazing World Cup final. Maybe Croatia does it. You said cagey. I'm kind of wondering what you think. Like, who benefits from a cagey game tomorrow? Does Argentina or does Croatia? Because I think Croatia benefits for.
Croatia definitely, because that's more like their game, whereas Argentina wants a more free flowing game. So I think that's why, Croatia today makes that a cagey game, and they can handle that because they can kind of control the ball when they need to. Like I said, they have some people in the middle of the field who can do that. So I do sense that's going to go Croatia's way in terms of pace of the game. That kind of helps them. In the Morocco-France game, I feel like we're going to see a continuation of the Portugal-Morocco game, but I think France is a lot better in that sense. The only thing, and I've talked about this last night on the pod as well, is the depth of France. If that game keeps going and it's a tie game and it happens to go to overtime and stuff like that, not that Morocco is a very deep bench, but I know especially attacking wise, France does not. So I can see that hurting them more and more as the game goes. But man, they have a lot better chance of creating some like one-on-one matchups with Dembele or Mbappe and creating something over there. And freaking Giroud is in the middle, so he's gonna get a freaking goal one way or the other.
The Mbappe and Giroud's form right now, it's really hard. It'd be a hard task for Morocco to stop that tomorrow. It's gonna be kind of like an onslaught, and you hope for a close game, but I wouldn't be surprised if that game tomorrow is like 3-0. I mean, they kind of just, Morocco keeps Africa proud and their country proud, but I wouldn't be surprised if, they slot a couple, like 2 away early in the first 20 minutes, and then they get a third just to kill it at some point during the game. So I hope all the best for Morocco, but the way France is playing, it's hard for me to pick Morocco over France. You know what I mean?
It is, yeah. And I think, the more that, like I say, the longer the game goes as like a goalless draw, I think it kind of helps Morocco. I mean, they're kind of playing with house money. I think that's like the one in terms of like a psychological factor. I think they have that going for them. Nobody expected them to be here. Everything is icing on the cake at the moment. And they're kind of like almost like riding a high. Like sometimes like you're just on a streak, like a heat check. They're kind of like in that mode. Whereas France being the heavy favorites already going into the tournament, and especially in this round, I feel like, they will have more of that pressure. There's literally no pressure. Nerves, yeah, but pressure, no, I think, for like Morocco, because those are like two totally separate things. I think they will play, like free. And I know, like I say, they are very good at coming out of the press, but that's not really what France does a lot of anyway. With Portugal, that was Portugal's ammo, like in terms of pressing up top, getting that ball and creating right away. That's not really how France has played so far. So I don't know if Morocco's advantage in breaking down a press is going to pay off against France. But regardless, it's like an interesting matchup. So before we head out over here and grab the second cup of Joe, you got coffee in the car over there or tea? What you got in the car?
Red Bull.
Red Bull, Champions Breakfast. Okay, give me a score before we go for today.
Today,
Argentina, Croatia.
I think it's going to be 1-1, and I think it's going to go down to penalty kicks again for Croatia.
Yeah, then if it goes to penalty kicks, Croatia wins by default. They shouldn't even like take him. They should be like, this is your
Well,
guy's thing.
like I was telling you in chat, that goalie that they have for Croatia, I wouldn't, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he moves to the Premier League in the summer, because I think he's just that good of a goalie. And they had Handanovic, who was an amazing goalie for them, and now they have this kid that plays for Dynamo Zagreb, and I'm gonna be honest with you, is the reason why they're doing so well in Europe. So I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a big move in the summer to someone in the Premier League or some big club in Spain or Italy. I mean, he is a good goalie. So, but I think it's going to come down to penalty kicks today. And then I think it is 3-0 France in the second.
I can live with both those, actually. I can see both those happening. So let's hope at least they're good games. I think, having seen the last game, I can see Croatia trying to get under the skin of Argentina, knowing that is doable. I think they've seen that where they're not always able to keep their calm. I just hope it's not another cheesy call on Messi. To get Messi this World Cup is what gets them through. That's what I was just hoping for. If they go out there and play their game and beats Croatia, more power to them. I just don't want like a cheesy call or some, anybody coughs next to Messi, gets Argentina a free kick or something like that. As long as that doesn't happen, I'll be happy. But yeah, my heart definitely roots for Croatia. Obviously, you always kind of like root for the underdogs, but realistically, I think realistically in the France game, you see France as the favorite and moving. I don't even know, like, realistically, when you use your brain, you can kind of make a case for both teams today. And so he says cough next to Messi. It is what I mean, he had that handball. Okay, like the same thing happened literally like 20 minutes before. They showed the yellow card, and it was like, oh, you're cool, man. You're Messi. You're my boy. And that you can keep swatting shit around. That's okay with you. And that's what I hate about this whole superstar thing. And I feel like Mbappe does not get as much of those as, Messi and Ronaldo do. So he's too young for that. Slowly.
No, I definitely agree with you on that one. Messi, that, like, one of my friends, or no, I was reading the English media about how England and that ref for the England game was terrible. I'm like, did they not even watch the Argentina game? That was terrible. That was probably one of the worst refereed games.
Quarterfinals were rough.
Yeah, like that was awful. I mean, it was so bad. It was like I wouldn't even ask the guy to referee another game, because I know we were talking about it in chat, and I was like, and I think people forgot, but he was the one that was refereeing Liverpool versus Napoli, and he was calling a lot of the same stuff, like just stuff that wasn't a foul, and it was like frustrating Liverpool, and it was frustrating Napoli, because it was just like totally taking the flow out of the game and everything. We might not remember that, but I remember him refereeing that game, man. I was like, man, this dude's not a good ref.
I remember him like being the fourth guy. I think that was in the Champions League final, I want to say, but he was not on the pitch, so that's all good. You can stay on the sideline and hold up the numbers and crap. Just don't get out there. But it was, the quarterfinals were rough, and I know a couple of those refs are done now. Probably based on those, because I know they go by this point system and stuff like that, and obviously who's left. I mean, you can be the best French referee, but you're not going to go like do the final if France is on there. But yeah, let's just hope that that's not what we're talking about after the game is over. We're just talking about football stuff and not refereeing. But Alex, thanks for hopping on, man, and thanks to all those listening and joining in and chiming in. Tune in again tomorrow morning. I have Rami over here. I know he'll be very excited about the Morocco game, and we'll probably talk a lot about that, because I know that I don't even know that dude is gonna sleep tonight. So we'll talk to him tomorrow, maybe with lack of sleep in the morning. We'll see how he's doing, and then we'll be back then. You guys have an awesome Tuesday, people. Take care.